a risk, but he'll be eliminated. X-Hope will move on to face Frozen in that decider match, which will happen a little bit later this week on Saturday. That'll also be the quarterfinals that day. But let's go ahead and take a look at the matchup to come. This is going to be the winner's matchup for Group B. One of these players is going through to the quarterfinals right now. Taking a look at their deck list, Pirate Warrior banned out for both of them. We won't be seeing that probably for a while, Admirable, but give me the scoop.
Yeah, Pirate Warrior's been a pretty beastly deck for quite a while now. You saw what it did last series, even in the face of Rito Jackson, was oftentimes still able to win games if they got the right sequence of draws. But for me, the big story is that Europe is doing extremely well in this tournament versus what the other regions are doing.
Yeah, Stanudachi is already waiting in the quarterfinal. If Neirea were to make it 2, that would be a pretty good thing for Europe. A lot of bragging rights for them. All of them said that Europe was the strongest region coming in. Well, the casters said it. Even some of the other players in the other regions said it, you know, despite them having pride in their own.
Yeah, I mean, they're showing it too. 3-0 so far in their matches. Can't wait to see what's next.
But it's time to introduce the players for the next match. The winner's match for Group B. First player from Korea, one of the most successful players in domestic Korean competition. It's Palmblad. And his opponent from the Ukraine, he's the European veteran, it's Neirea.
It's go time! Neirea versus Palmblad.
Match against Dr. Jinkininki was hard. I made one crucial misplay that cost me the game.
There's Frostbolt. Oh my! That's a lot of damage Neirea just lost. That's a pretty big oversight.
It was kind of a punish for my misplay.
첫 번째 경기가
In my match against Lovely Chuk, after I won the first game, I got a lot of confidence and became more relaxed, which I think helped me win.
Against Palmblad, I have slightly favorable lineup. I think the only difference, he has Priest and I have Druid.
네이리아가 이제 사제
My next match is against Neirea, and his decks are very strong against my Priest. So if I can win with my Priest, I think I have a very good chance of winning the match.
I'm just playing my game. I don't really care who is on the other side of the table.
Neirea versus Palmblad. Ready, set, go!
Greetings from the tavern and welcome everybody to the winner's match of Group B, Neirea from Ukraine up against Palmblad from Korea. My name is Frodan, I'm joined by Brian Kibler, and we are going to bring you guys this epic best of 7. The train doesn't stop, Brian.
Yeah, I mean, this has been a long day already, but still some Hearthstone left to play. These two players are duking it out for a shot in the quarterfinals, so big match for the both of them.
That's right. The winner of this goes to the top 8. And remember, the top 4 goes to the World Championship. Now, of course, they play for a lot more than just the championship, too. There's $250,000 on the line for this entire tournament, so there's a lot of money to be had as well. Let's go to the first game. We have Mage versus Dragon Priest. Now, we have seen both these players really tackle Freeze Mage and really use it effectively against their opponents. Palmblad, of course, we saw him play some really epic matches up against his opponent in the previous series. But, you know, Neirea, he also has a little bit of implied pressure because Europe has yet to lose. So we'll see if he's able to keep up the streak that Stanudachi has been able to set as a precedent.
Yeah, Palmblad, we heard him say in his interview earlier that he felt like this was the weak link of his lineup. He felt like Neirea's decks were very strong against his Dragon Priest deck. He's bringing it out here in the very first game, trying to find a win, like he said. He said if he can find a win with this deck, he thinks that he has a good chance of winning the matchup. And you and I actually ran into Neirea, and he said the exact same thing. He said, I think that any of my decks have the ability to beat his Priest deck, so he thinks that's going to be the weak link for Palmblad.
All right, well, Palmblad's on Dragon Priest. Now, this matchup, you know what? This matchup can get a little bit silly, Brian. You know, you see Shadow Word Pain, that is one of the most useful cards, and that ends up having a little dance back and forth. You know, Shadow Word Pain, the Acolyte, or the Doomsayer. Or do you save it for the or do you use it on Doomsayer and not deny the Acolyte draws. And, you know, there's also the possibility of Dragonid Operative discovering Ice Block or Extra Burn, almost to the point where a lot of Freeze Mage players say, I even keep Ice Block in the opening hand to avoid them discovering it, similar to anything can happen.
Yeah, and you know, Palmblad does have that Operative in his hand, and as you mentioned, that's going to be one of the very key cards in the matchup to give him access to the tools from Neirea's deck that can save him from Neirea's deck.
Yeah.
One of the problems with Dragon Priest, we saw this earlier as well playing against Reno Warlock, he doesn't really have much reach, doesn't have much ability to end the game outside of minion damage, and Freeze Mage, of course, very good at stopping minion damage from coming in.
Yeah, it's completely okay to concede the board eventually, but you want to reduce as much damage as possible. You're not going to win the board or control the state of the board for too long against a deck like Dragon.
And I think this is a really interesting play from Palmblad. He actually just snaps off playing the Defender of Argus to get down the most stats on the board. A lot of players may think, okay, I want to get both minions buffed by Defender of Argus and play, say, another Sprite Historian there to discover another dragon, but Palmblad just recognizes, I need to get as much pressure as I can, and this is what does that right here.
All right, well, you know, I wonder if Palmblad feels like the earlier Dragonid Operative is better. It is the better stat line as well. At the same time, you know, the earlier you discover, the more variety of range of cards you can hit, you know, versus later on. It's very interesting to think about what timing Operative can go. But I do like the idea of putting on as much pressure as possible, just like what Palmblad did the previous turn.
Yeah, definitely slowing down from his previous turn here, debating how he wants to navigate this. A couple of options. He can play the Operative, as you mentioned, sort of the most powerful on-board play immediately. He could play the Historian and Talon Priest and possibly buff up more of his minions, a little bit of a wider board, and does choose to go with the Historian. Finds another Operative, which is pretty crucial. Able to buff up his board, protect everything from Loot Hoarder attacks. So now, you know, these minions are going to be very difficult for Neirea to actually kill, since they're defended by that 2/7.
Yep. You can see Neirea also has some pretty crucial cards too. The Triple Freeze, which might give extended range or extended turns for Neirea to help assemble the big combo damage. First, going to draw out the Loot Hoarder, picks up Ice Block #1. Very valuable indeed. I might even see double Secret this turn, just because he wants to get it out of the way, be mana efficient.
Yeah, Ice Barrier is so powerful against these mid-range decks. In the early turns, you're essentially just negating your opponent's entire turn. And Operative finds kind of awkward. Does just take the Alexstrasza, which is not generally that effective in the matchup. You usually are going to die if your opponent can get you to 15. That's, you know, they tend to Alexstrasza you, and you're putting enough pressure on them that they're rarely going to be taking damage effectively from Alexstrasza's ability that late in the game.
Well, hey, if Neirea ends
just
up
keeps freezing.
Chain freezes, you might actually get to do some damage. Not to mention, Alexstrasza's a dragon, so you might need that dragon synergy. Well, we'll see. I mean, Palmblad has 4 dragons in hand, so probably not, but you never know. Neirea picks up more burst. You know, Forgotten Torch, Roaring Torch, cool, but for now, Dragon Priest put on a lot of pressure. There's 10, 13 damage on the board.
And Neirea does have the ability to freeze the board many times over, but he doesn't have the critical mass of burn just yet. He hasn't had a chance to draw quite enough cards in order to assemble that. Because he has so many freezes, he's lacking those other critical pieces of the puzzle.
He does have one turn that he can absorb damage. He might be scared of the Operative Discover, right? We already know that it's an Alexstrasza, but Neirea doesn't, so he's calculating ranges. And if he feels like he's safe, he could end up just drawing cards instead, saying, Novice Engineer maybe to split the difference in case he needs to start removing or stalling. He chooses to Roaring Torch the Draconid Operative. This is interesting. You know, I was kind of expecting either a draw or a freeze, but he's saving his freezes. He's saying these are the most valuable cards in my hand right now, and I'd rather part ways with my one-turn kill burst.
Yeah. Palmblad picks up a card from healing his Cleric. Ragnaros, that's a big one.
Yeah, that is one of those MVP cards that helped him in the previous matches. He's Alexstrasza again.
How many dragons do you want?
Yeah, probably 2 Alexstrazzas. Never really gonna see play. He might use Arcane Intellect if he's tough. If he's caught in a tough spot, needs to draw a specific removal spell.
But Ragnaros is the sort of anti-freeze mage card of choice. It gives him the ability to clock quite readily here, and that damage is not prevented by freeze effects. So he doesn't have to worry about that ability to Frost Nova, it. Ragnaros can end the game, or at least break the ice block, just over the course of a couple of turns.
Palmblad not even being afraid of his opponent at all. Just going to heal his minion, draw a card. Perhaps can find more removal if he needs, but he's already pretty much got everything.
One thing that's actually kind of interesting in this game, Palmblad the previous turn had the opportunity to attack one of his minions into Novice Engineer, chose to just attack the face. Under a lot of circumstances, that makes a lot of sense because you don't really care about your opponent's minions when you have a big taunt in play, but he has Ragnaros, and his opponent having a Novice Engineer could absorb 8 damage from Ragnaros' ability on a future turn.
Yeah, that's a good point too. Assuming that he wants to play Ragnaros, he could be saving Ragnaros as direct damage from the hand.
It's true.
Try to surprise Neirea, maybe complicate his calculations. Dragon Priest's not known to burst, and also he's discovered 2 cards. It's really scary to be the freeze mage from this position. He might feel like he has to freeze again, but at the same time, your hand doesn't really have the clock that you can put on your opponent. You draw a card with Acolyte, you're still very far away from killing your opponent.
The Ice Barrier right now does absorb a significant element of the board, but not quite all of it. But Emperor plus Nova, this is frankly a little bit of a desperation Emperor here. Neirea recognizing that he's in a bit of a tough spot against so many minions in play. And now Shadowward Paid sent at that Novice Engineer. That has to broadcast to Neirea that there is a Ragnaros in Palmblad's hand.
Yeah, Palmblad drawing last, but I don't think any of those cards would have changed the play here.
And
another freeze. Okay, so that actually fits really well with the mana. You can ping the Acolyte, and you can Blizzard. And what's actually important is your opponent just used Bookworm and Shadowward Pain, so maybe you can get another card off.
Right, yeah. And there's also the fact that Neirea, I believe... Ooh, all right, there is... Actually, is he torching his own Acolyte?
This is so creative. I actually haven't seen this before. Torching your own Acolyte to improve your draw for the OTK. Wow.
Well, he's pretty
really
far
creative.
from being able to kill his opponent in one turn, has actually 0 burn in hand right now.
Okay, so how much damage is on the board? 16 plus Ragnaros is 24. So if he Ice Barriers, and Neirea will have his Ice Block popped. But if he Ice Barriers and Frost Novas, he's guaranteed to be safe 100%. You know, because again, he has to be mindful of Palmblad has Discover cards. You know, he saw Arcane Intellect as one of them, but it still could be burned.
Yeah, it could very easily be a Fireball, very easily be something that can give him additional reach here. 15 damage on the board. Yeah, he would go to effectively 22 with the barrier alone. And does fire off the Frost Nova, so...
Yep. He's trying to figure out how many turns he can get at the post-Alexstrasza. And it's not many. It's not many turns. Ragnar's going to come down, threaten to pop Neirea's block, even through the Ice Barrier. Even if Neirea freezes again for one more turn, that Ice Block's getting popped. Unless you play the Acolyte of Pain. And even then, he's got the removal with the Shadowward Pain.
All right. Neirea picking up an Arcane Intellect, can dig for a little bit more.
It's pretty important. Just needs to draw more cards after his Alexstrasza. This is the only turn he can do it because he doesn't have the guarantee of Ice Block. But he's going to need a lot of runners to hit back-to-back Kibler.
This is an opportunity that Palmblad has to break this Ice Block and clear off the Alexstrasza. He can just throw minions into it. Ragnaros will do the dirty work of taking out the Ice Block.
There's not many combo set of cards with just 3 that can kill you if you're healing back up to 17, but you got to be a little bit scared if you're Palmblad. However, if he's also hand tracking, he knows there's no more discounted Emperor cards. So he should also know that his opponent's range is slightly limited in the upcoming turns if he's paying attention.
He's deciding exactly how he wants to trade into this Alexstrasza as well.
I actually kind of like freeing up the board space in case you need to have some Hail Mary plays, although I don't think there's any dragons you can discover, for example, with the Historian to heal yourself.
You can discover, like, Nefarian and get secrets that can keep you alive.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, there are these fairly obscure things that can happen.
You're right, you're right. You can also just mega buff Ragnaros.
Kind of running out of time for this. He doesn't have... The rope is burning.
He's got to heal himself, too.
He does.
Oh boy. Play something. All right. I thought the plan was to mega buff the Ragnaros health, you know, like just in case, like Talon Priest, but I think he just played a card because he realized he had 10 cards and had to do something. Didn't really matter. Either way, Neirea is potentially on his last turn here and needs to draw something helpful. Ice Lance. He basically needs a second ice block at this point. He needs a second ice block, and he needs every single combo card possible.
Yeah, this is not going to do it here. He's going to ping his Blood Mage.
Last chance. No, chooses the Roaring Torch himself.
Found
Exact lethal. And Dragon Priest gets there. You know, sometimes just too much board pressure, too much tempo.
You know, we heard in the pre-match interview with the players, you know, Palmblad saying that he felt like the key was getting his Dragon Priest through. He felt like if he could get a win with that, he has an advantage in the matchup. He got that win in the very first game.
Well, you know, Priest has had a pretty subpar win rate in the event so far. We've had 13 games, and Priest only won 5 of them. So it's prior to this series, it was at a 33% win rate for the entire tournament. So Palmblad up to a good start so far, 1-0. Let's go ahead and get to know him a little bit better with a little well-met segment, and then when we come back, game number 2.
Well met.
안녕하세요. 저는 판블라드.
Hello, my name is Palmblad from Korea, and I'm 32 years old.
저는 하루에 하스스톤 한
I play Hearthstone about 5 hours a day, and I can't play Hearthstone without having coffee.
제가 가장 좋아하는 덱은
My favorite deck is Control Priest, because patience is key with this deck. You have to set a trap and let the player fall into it, and then destroy them all at once.
It's a trap card. That's kind of what Palmblad's style is. He likes being able to get into the mind of the players a little bit, and just being able to hear him talk about the game when we had a chance to sit down with him for, you know, for a little bit of time prior to this tournament starting. You can really see that this guy understands the game a lot. He's been playing since the very beginning. He actually recently got a job as a game designer and was thinking about taking some time off from competitive Hearthstone, but he said his last tournament will be the World Championship, which is a really bold statement, and so far, so good.
Yeah, working out for him so far, but you know, still only one game down in this series, has still a long road ahead of him to take down Neirea, who is no stranger to this level of competition at all.
This has to be something that Neirea is slightly concerned about, but not necessarily this matchup. It's the fact that Palmblad actually won with the Dragon Priest. You know, you mentioned, Brian, that you talked to Neirea, and he said Dragon Priest is a deck that Neirea can sweep potentially, and Jade Druid is a deck that Palmblad cannot. Dragon Priest is already gone, so the deck that he was feeling really confident, the difference between their lineups, already out the window.
Yeah, it looks like Neirea is going with a Coin Jade Blossom here, ramping up, getting his Jades going right away. Palmblad, his hand is pretty awkward. He had card draw with that Novice Engineer, but does not have anything to follow it up with. Pair of Blizzards, Ice Barrier, Ice Block. He has a lot of reactive cards to bridge to the late game, but he has none of the tools he needs to build up the resources he needs to win.
You know, we saw this matchup, I believe, earlier today where the Jade Druid just was trying to pressure the Freeze Mage, but Freeze Mage just got enough damage right off the top. I think actually that was Palmblad that was able to close it out against Lovely Chug. And you know, we'll see if he's able to kind of weather the storm again. Ice Barrier, okay to stall for early game, and right now the hand of Palmblad is looking pretty weak. You're looking to cycle a lot. Just get a bunch of card draw. You don't want to be hero passing or hero power passing, or even just using your turn to develop secrets if you don't have to.
Yeah, taking all this time to figure out exactly what he wants to do here. He, you know, has both those secrets, which would be the most mana-efficient thing to do. He could trade into the 1-1, but that does leave the 2-2 left on the board. And if he were to just attack the 1-1 in and ping, that would be a less efficient use. He's going to sort of split the difference here. He wants to ensure that his hero power can take out either of these minions, and I like this. He ensures that he's using all of his mana, and also makes the biggest threat vulnerable to his hero power the following turn.
All right, well, Neirea just trying to go for as much board pressure, doing the exact same thing that Palmblad did to him, but with the Jade Druid pressure. Now, the Doomsayer pickup is useful in combination with Blizzard, but that's late game. Right now, Palmblad, if he plays that Doomsayer, it's just going to give him 7 health. Is that what he's looking for right now?
He's pretty far from being able to effectively use that Doomsayer to clear. He has a lot of life to work with. He's at 34, so he's a lot of time here. Just going to go ahead and Frostbolt off the 3-3. I think he may thinking again about it. I think he may be considering the possibility of even playing Doomsayer plus Ice Lance on a future turn to try and buy a little bit of time here to clear things off. But Neirea has a very strong hand to continue applying pressure here as well.
You're losing a lot of damage, though, because Ice Lances is what makes that combo really powerful. This Druid Claw charging is also even more tempo in Druid's favor, which is largely what Neirea's deck list has favored for the most part. He's got 2 Druid Claws, he's got an Ancient of War, and that's just very minion-driven as opposed to Auctioneer-driven.
Well, there's Frost Nova picked up to go with the Doomsayer. Neirea, he has the ability to clear it off, but it would demand he use Feral Rages, which is a really scary use of your resources in a matchup where your opponent is trying to burn you to death.
Yeah, it's interesting. He didn't even think about it. He said, these are so critical for winning the game late stages. I'm not going to even bother to save my board.
He does end up with a 4/4 on the board afterwards, so he doesn't want to expend all of that to effectively protect a 5/3, because he would obviously save in terms of the immediate board presence.
Well, there's the Druid Claw, too.
It's true. Well,
you actually would have 9
well,
power.
he gets I'm saying he would have a 4/4 and a 5/3 compared to just a 4/4, which is what he has afterwards.
Gotcha.
Obviously, from a resource perspective, it's more than that. But from a tempo perspective, which is really what he's looking at, it ends up working out a bit like that. So,
yeah, I think what makes the decision a lot easier for Neirea is the fact that Palmblad has so few cards.
Right.
Freeze Mage would have to spend so much time drawing and cycling to be a real threat. And if Feral Rages can be used to gain armor and your opponent doesn't have a lot of card draw, maybe just outlast them and just, you don't really need that much more. Just have a minion stick on the board and start whacking away.
yeah, absolutely. And Neirea, in a very strong situation here, not only with 8 power on the board, but also a pair of Feral Rages, including Fandral in his hand. He could even Fandral Feral Rage here and gain life and ensure that that Palmblad does not gain additional cards from the Acolyte. And if you even wanted to, send in the Living Roots, get more minions.
I like it. It translates to more damage. Your opponent does not run Flame Strikes. It's a pretty standard list these days. Most Freeze Mage lists don't have Flame Strikes because they don't really need to remove it. Plus, you really actually need the stall more than anything. So Double Blizzard is the way to go.
Yeah, exactly what Neirea does, just pushing that damage to the face. And will the Living Roots go as well to take down the Acolyte here? Build a little bit bigger board?
I mean,
Right.
he probably wants to just maximize his damage, so I like it. Forcing your opponent to have the AoE removal or stall. Palmblad does have Blizzard. Ooh. Yeah, it doesn't have much of a choice, though. He can layer the Blizzards over 2 turns to guarantee a clear. You can ping the Fandral next turn with the Blizzard.
Yeah. He does need to keep pinging to get rid of that armor, though.
That's true.
A lot he needs to burn through here.
And Neirea can pop the Ice Block this turn, which has to be something pretty appealing. You pop him at 2 life, which is a little bit annoying if your opponent stalls one more time because you only have your hero power.
Yeah, but you're also gaining 8 armor here, and you don't really have a ton of value from the swipe. And he's sitting at 45, 46 once he shapeshifts against an opponent who is at 2.
Yeah.
And he has a board. Neirea is just in an absolutely commanding position here.
All right, so Palmblad has the second Ice Block. And so he's got an Ice Block and Blizzard here. Or could he be greedy?
Man, he's facing down a lot on that board. And there's still a swipe and another Living Roots that would just kill him if he were to just Blizzard plus Barrier, I believe.
Well, he's got 1 Living Root.
Oh, he only has 1 Living Root, so yeah, it's only just the swipe. So yeah, it does set up the Ice Block, though.
I mean, it's sometimes tempting to see if you can be greedy, but Palmblad's not going to play with fire. Neirea's going to draw because he's running a little bit short on resources. After this turn, he can play a 5/5 and a 6/6 Jade. But Palmblad's also used almost all of his stall. He's used 1 Frost Nova, 2 Blizzards. There's not much left here.
Oh, there's another swipe too. So that means that even if Palmblad is able to sort of defend from this this minion-based damage, there's a swipe that can break through and ensure that he can break through the barrier when it comes down afterwards.
Yeah, this is just back-to-back games of Freeze Mage getting beat down.
I like it.
Yeah, somewhere in the world, George C is crying right now, or laughing. There's a bunch of Freeze Mage specialists who of course, are watching alongside with us in HCT, helping us prepare. Big shout out to Laughing, who's helped the casters prepare for specific Freeze Mage matchups. But at the same time, there's not really much going on for them. It seems like Neirea has everything. He can even swipe, remove, and pop the ice block and get everything going. Popping him at 1-2, very nice. Just making sure to squeeze in every bit of damage and put his opponent on a situation where they need Alexstrasza in order to survive.
And even then, he's playing a Jade Spirit, and he has a charging Druid of the Claw next turn.
You're right.
So Alexstrasza would not leave him alive.
Yeah. It would have to be Alexstrasza's secret, or Alexstrasza removal.
Yeah, there's Alexstrasza.
Yeah, but he didn't discount it with the Emperor.
Not yet, not enough here. Palmblad, he is in a... in quite the situation here. He's going to try to stay alive. He's using the resources he has to clear off what he knows. He can leave exactly 8, but there is that Druid of the Claw waiting in the wings.
Yeah, Neirea got there. I mean, without that Druid of the Claw, maybe there was a chance for Palmblad to maybe clean up and have Alexstrasza hard carry this game, but not going to be the case. And that is an even series. Neirea being able to strike back.
And yeah, we saw, just the power of the Jade Druid deck there in this matchup. It wasn't even close in terms of life total. Neirea's at 47. He was just absolutely in the driver's seat the entire time.
Yeah, as you can see that Mage has actually had, actually the most games today. We've had 22 games of Mage. They've dropped 2 in a row, but prior to that, they were about 10 and 10, so 50-50, depending on if you played the Reno Mage or the Freeze Mage. And we'll see what happens. The differences in their lineups have actually been removed. We talked about Jade Druid versus Dragon Priest, but outside of that, they both have Miracle Rogue, they both have Freeze Mage, they both have Reno Warlock. Now we come down to see who is favored. There are slight differences, but in the end, they're about the same decks.
Yeah, and both these players have frankly performed very well so far today. We did see the little blunder that Neirea talked about in the pregame, but overall, very, very solid performance from these players. So we'll see if they can continue that in these potentially mirror matches.
That's right. He's got a long-standing pedigree in competitive Hearthstone, making it to BlizzCon 2015. Neirea has a lot to prove to see that he is not just a player to be forgotten. We got a chance to sit down and talk to him and get to know him better.
I'm a pretty calm person. I don't really get nervous. If you get nervous a lot during the tournament, just, I don't know, drink a coffee or something. Last year, I had not any success. There was no tournaments like for me. I played only in prelims for 1 year, probably. I was really unsure about everything. About the preparation, deck preparation, about my plays.
Neirea has bitten the dust.
That's elimination for Neirea. Unbelievable.
Right now, I'm more realistic about stuff, and I think it helps me a bit. I just come into a tournament knowing that I will lose. That's how I come to a tournament. And then I try to do my best to not lose. If you think you'll win, you'll get overconfident. I think it's might be a weakness of a player.
Neirea made the brave plays. It's going to be Neirea booking his spot at the Bahamas.
It feels amazing to be back on track for the biggest events.
Absolutely huge congratulations to our winner there, Neirea.
With good preparation, good playing skills, you can get some achievements. But I'm pretty confident that I can lose every series, so trying to do my best to not lose.
I like it. He's a man that prepares. He says, I am ready to lose, but I'm going to do my best to stop it. And I think that is actually surprisingly humble. I think so many players walk through that door, through the tavern, and say, you know what, I'm the best player in this room. There's no way I can lose. And I think Neirea, as a result of his ability to stay grounded, he actually is rather open-minded about stuff.
Yeah, I've talked to a number of players who've been involved in competitive gaming for a long time, and they say one of the things you need to get used to is losing, because you're going to do it a lot. And being able to accept those losses and bounce back from those losses is the hallmark of a player who will have longevity in the scene.
All right, well, let's go to game 3 and see if Neirea can lose a little less than his opponent this series. It's Freeze Mage Mirrors. Now, this matchup can definitely, if you're new to Hearthstone and you haven't seen or played much of this deck, the mirror matchup can definitely get a little weird. Sometimes you just are trying to avoid overdrawing because you're not really actually removing threats. And there's also the dance of who can get their Emperors and Alexstrazzas out and pressure their opponent. And we'll see what ends up transpiring. Right now, Palmblad, he's got the draw, he's got the Emperor. if he can line up his cards correctly, he might be the one in driver's seat, but Neirea also has the Alexstrasza. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, both players looking to do the same thing here. Definitely a very intricate dance. Freeze Mage Mirror was what was one of the most hyped matches in sort of Hearthstone history, the Osaka versus Tice semifinal game back at BlizzCon a couple of years ago, which, the calculations from each player every turn that resulted in a ping self being a game-defining moment. We'll see if this lives up to that kind of hype.
Well, it is a matchup where every single point of incremental damage does matter. For example, this trade. Is that something that Neirea feels like because he has to be defensive, or if he wants to be offensive? His opponent's coming up on 3 mana. If you can disrupt their Acolyte of Pain turn or other things, gain that 2 damage might matter.
It's also very interesting that Neirea chose not to play his Acolyte of Pain that turn. He chose to play the Novice Engineer. And yeah, now he's going to kill his own Novice Engineer to prevent the damage from the Acolyte of Pain, and now try to deny additional cards with the Doomsayer, also freeing up room in his hand by removing a weak card in the Doomsayer.
Yeah. There is, a lot of card draw in Palmblad's hand. And one thing to consider, too, is if your hand doesn't show an ability to go aggressive, there actually is possibility of just using Alexstrasza defensively, which almost effectively feels like the same thing. And you also have to be very careful once your opponent has Ice Block, not to overextend too far, because if they're able to play Alexstrasza afterwards and use all your burn, you commit all your Ice Lances and all your Frost Bolts, you might run out of damage immediately and your opponent counter swings you and you're in trouble. This matchup gets very complicated if it ends up being very even. Sometimes it just has one-sided games. You see this Emperor landing on Alexstrasza, being able to land on a few other cards too, which might be impactful. Ice Barriers, maybe not so much,
and
but
there
some
are
other key cards.
2 Ice Barriers and a Frost Nova here, which are among the weaker cards in the matchup. While Neirea has a fistful of some of the more powerful cards, he's a mana off from being able to use Torch and ping his own guy. He could actually play Blood Mage, ping my Acolyte, Frostbolt your Emperor, and attack into it. So he gets 2 cards from the Acolyte, which is very key. This is a matchup which is largely about assembling a critical mass of resources and sort of the jockeying for position in the mid to late game with those burn spells.
Yeah, I don't mind that too much. Torch is probably the card you think about parting ways with the most, but it looks like you do have to forego an extra card, so I do like what you're suggesting, Brian. And it looks like Neirea's going to draw first, just in case he picks up a different play. Doesn't seem like it. And double Ice Lands. Well, I mean, that's one way to make you feel better about losing the Frostbolt. And he does have Alexstrasza with a lot of damage, and he has Emperor Thorsan himself. So Neirea is assembling quite a bit of damage. Palmblad picks up his second Fireball. Not necessarily what he needs right now. Just looking for more card draw. Ice Block a huge pickup too. You definitely want to get that set up sometime soon.
I hope you like my invention.
Yeah, Palmblad drawing away with quite a few reduced burn spells.
Okay, so he's at 10 cards.
Is he really?
Yeah. Palmblad's at 10 cards, and he says, I'm okay with losing my next card, even if it's Evolved Cobalt? I'd be very scared if I was Palmblad. I mean, it's unlikely. It's one of 13 cards. Okay. It's unlikely, but, a lot of times we panic because we've all been in that scenario where it's like, well, it's unlikely something gets burned. Not a big deal. In fact, I know Osaka was actually one of those players saying, I think he said a lot of people in Freeze Mage Mirrors actually care way too much about burning cards. And ever since he said that, I definitely thought about it, but I panic a little bit, Brian, because this is the big stage where a lot of it's on the line.
Yeah, I think a lot of Hearthstone players in general worry too much about burning cards or are too excited to burn their opponent's cards.
Yeah.
But this Alexstrasza coming down to burn Palmblad's face. And now, not only is Palmblad suddenly in a position where he needs to worry about, okay, how can I maneuver around this damage that Neirea is representing, but also there's an 8 in the board.
Yeah, well, he does get uses off of things like Frost Nova, and remember, Alexstrasza yourself sometimes can be pretty effective as well. And you can remove it over a couple turns. I think the really big thing is that Palmblad has picked up his second Ice Block, which meant that he has as many turns as Neirea might have burn to be able to use Alexstrasza once Neirea has overcommitted. But he's in a defensive posture. He's going to have to Fireball and remove over turns with Frost Nova, or maybe he just uses Ice Barrier to stall for an extra turn as well. These are all things that he can consider, but he has to also think about, does he have the hand that allows him to win the game? Because does he have an opportunity to go aggressive? On turn 10, if he saves Frost Nova, he can Alexstrasza Frost Nova his opponent's board, and then maybe start pushing damage that way. Or maybe he's planning for whatever he draws because he... Oh my goodness.
One good dragon deserves another.
Okay, I wasn't expecting this play, Brian.
I was not either. He is giving Neirea an Alexstrasza attack. This gives Neirea value from Frost Nova as well.
And Neirea sees no ice barrier. He says maybe it's ice barrier, but I mean that's kind of crazy.
I mean,
okay. Neirea didn't have ice block up yet,
right?
So that explains it. He thinks maybe Neirea's not holding an ice block, and he might have the extra turn to burn. Makes a lot of sense. Apologize over not covering it, and of course we saw the 2 ice blocks from Neirea's hand, so it makes sense.
Yeah, and now Neirea has to make a decision here. He can Fireball Ping. He could to insist essentially that Palmblad has an additional ice block this turn, and he has his second ice block here too. And now he's going to just use an Ice Lance, breaking up some of his burn, but he doesn't need additional burn now. There's no more life gain available for Palmblad. That Alexstrasza, which he used offensively, was his defensive tool to survive burn.
And he needs to pop the block while developing his own ice block, and I think he can't do both. I think it's too much mana investment. He has to play ice block this turn no matter what. That leaves him 6 mana, and yes, he has the cards, he just can't do it all in this turn.
Yep.
So Palmblad got really aggressive in a matchup that sometimes ends up becoming down to the fatigue stages, and he tried to end this game early, but he's the one being ended. He just concedes.
And I think that may have been sort of a recognition from Palmblad that he was in just a really tight spot. He was facing down this Alexstrasza. If he tried to use his burn to stay in the game, that he was just going to be losing to an average hand, and maybe he's just hoping, okay, maybe you just don't have ice block. Maybe I can just kill you here with this ice block to protect me. Unfortunately for him, Neirea had it, and that was the game.
This is the point where I think people got to bust out calculators. Your opponent's 17 cards deep into their deck, and they have 2 ice blocks, with a possibility of drawing a lot more because they still have other things like Acolytes and Arcane Intellects. I do feel like it's kind of likely that your opponent has the ice block to follow it up. And plus, you're giving up your 8 damage for your opponent. So if they have a single ice block, pop your ice block, you need to be able to have that ice block and pop theirs. So it just felt like a situation where Palmblad felt like his chances were so low with his hand when he did have an answer with Frost Nova over 2 turns.
I mean, I think that might have been it. I think he may have felt that his best chance to win was just to hope there wasn't an ice block there. He felt like, I'm already massively behind here against this Alexstrasza. There was a big hand that was Emperor reduced on Neirea's side of the table as well, and that he felt like maybe he didn't have exactly what he needed, but unfortunately for him, he did.
All right, well, the winner of this will move on to the top 8, which will be joined by 4 other players tomorrow. We're going to continue Group C and D, 7 a.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Central European time. Make sure to join us. Also, Brian, you're revealing some cards tomorrow.
It's true. Yeah, at 6 a.m. Pacific time, 9 a.m. here in the Bahamas. I'll be joined by Dean Ayala, or rather, I suppose I'll be joining him since he's the designer in the game.
You'll be joining each other.
It's true.
Did you peek at the cards,
We'll hug it
Brian?
out. We'll hug it out. No, I have not seen the cards yet, so I am just as excited as the rest of you to see what we will be revealing tomorrow morning. But before that, we've got a lot more Hearthstone action as we get into Game 4 of Neirea versus Palmblad.
All right, so Reno Warlock up against Freeze Mage, and Palmblad's going to go back to it. We've had Freeze Mage every single game of this series so far, and it seems to be the focal point. That's 3 losses in a row for Freeze Mage in this series, with potential for more. I've seen Reno Warlocks be able to sneak away wins from Freeze Mages despite being in tough situations. And you look at Neirea's deck list, yeah, he's got cards like Mountain Giant, and he's got the Twilight Drakes. Could end up hitting them. He does have the 1 Mountain Giant, and if Palmblad doesn't have the right response, this game could also still go towards the way of the Reno Warlock.
Yeah, the popularity of Freeze Mage is very interesting in this tournament. Reno Mage was, for a very long time, the go-to mage deck, but with the changes to Small Time Buccaneer, as well as Spirit Claws, we have seen Freeze Mage sort of creep back into the competitive metagame here. It's a very interesting decision because it hasn't not performed super well so far in this tournament.
Yeah, well,
certainly not in this match.
And maybe this match is a little bit biased towards it, against it, because both players have such similar lineups. So it feels like there could be ways it falls. Like in the mirror match, it actually won a game and lost a game. But one thing that is interesting is the fact that Shamans have largely gravitated away from aggressive strategies. And with only Pirate Warrior as one of the primary problematic matchups, then maybe, yeah, Freeze Mage can take advantage of mid-range Shaman, can take advantage of Reno decks, can take advantage of you know, some of the other matches that people don't necessarily know how to play as well, like the Rogue or the Druid matchups. And also the fact that people don't necessarily always expect Freeze Mage. They think Reno Mage, even Tempo Mage has gotten popular. It is an interesting choice, and I think it's a very viable one.
Yeah, and definitely kind of a send-off for Freeze Mage, which, you know, this is the last major event that will be in the Year of the Kraken when Icelands will be moving to the Hall of Fame and be relegated to Wild.
Too soon.
Not soon enough. But anyway, we'll see quite a few more Icelands, I'm sure, over the course of this Winter Championship. Seems appropriate.
I was having a moment of silence for Icelands. I like this. Being able to hero power down the Reno Warlock is super critical. You just ignore this Imp Gang boss no matter how you cut it. It's very inefficient to remove. Just try to get that damage and sneak in. If you can force your opponent to Reno Jackson prior to your Alex Straza, or even just get him down within threatening ranges now that you have Evolved Kobold in your hand, there is wiggle room to sneak out a win. Well, cheese your opponent, so to speak.
Yeah, though that Mountain Giant will make things a little bit more difficult because it's much harder to spend your turn pinging when you're taking 8 damage every attack starting on turn 4.
Yeah, certainly hard, but you know, Palmblad does have options to stall and weave in removal over turns as well. But the problem is, like we always mention, Freeze Mage, they care so much about their freeze cards. Outside of Ice Block and, of course, game-ending damage, I think Frost Nova and Blizzard are their highest priority cards that you want to utilize to the maximum potential. Almost to the point where people just say, yeah, Ice Barrier is sometimes as good as Stall, because I can absorb a Mountain Giant hit. I don't have to use Frost Nova.
And Palmblad with a lot of options here. It can go digging a bit. He already has a very full hand, so I wouldn't expect him to fire off Arcane Intellect by itself.
Well, you know, yeah, if he Arcane Intellects, what ends up happening is he has too many cards, so he would have to...
He could play Frostbolt, for instance, but that's very crucial to his ability to burn down Neirea. Ooh, Reno Jackson picked up by Neirea here, though.
Yeah. Well, you kind of expect Reno Jackson or some kind of healing to disrupt your plans. Also, Neirea, interesting to note, he runs Alex Straza instead of Jiraxis. He's actually a huge proponent of that. Whenever I hang out with Neirea, he keeps telling me, like, why would people play Jiraxis? Alex Straza is just better, and it's very interesting to hear him go against other players conventional.
Using his heal here to keep the Giant alive. Already absorbed a Fireball, and now 5 more health the Palmblad will have to work through. Ice Barrier, as we mentioned, can buy some time, but there is 13 points on Neirea's side of the board.
Yeah, he might have to part ways with the stall here, but the good news is that he can draw behind it. You know, a lot of times when you stall as Freeze Mage, you're just stuck not doing much else. You might just Blizzard and pass, but in this case, you can Frost Nova and draw, or you can set up removal over the wave of 2 turns. Chooses to use Blizzard. Could be because of the fact that his hand is just so heavy. You know, he wants to figure out ways to use Emperor and Frost Nova maybe in combination, or save Frost Nova with other things over the next couple turns.
Yeah, quite often you would much rather expend the more expensive card simply because it gives you more options with the cheaper card. As you mentioned, being able to pair the Frost Nova with, say, Emperor, or being able to weave in hero powers with it alongside a secret perhaps later on can be a pretty big deal.
You know, I was looking at Neirea's hand, I was thinking, you know what, this hand's pretty awkward, but Neirea doesn't even want to tap, because he recognizes that he puts himself within semi-critical ranges at around, 21 or less, because you do put yourself vulnerable to Thalnos combos as well as Cobalt combos. So he's being very cautious. I like it.
Yeah, even with Reno in his hand, choosing not to life tap, and he does have, I believe he would actually have overdrawn if he had just life tapped there. He'd have to play something too.
Could have coined.
Yeah.
But man, Neirea has no threats. Sorry, well, he has Leroy Jenkins, but that's not really a threat to play immediately onto the board.
All right, Doomsayer here could potentially block Emperor Thaurissan from Palmblad, which we see is in his hand, so just going to go ahead and use the turn to draw and establish a secret, I imagine, as well as get a ping in on Neirea's face. So, as you mentioned, every bit of incremental damage is pretty important here.
Yeah, but without an Emperor activating on a bunch of cards, Neirea still has to feel safe. Evolved Cobalt ranges are definitely hard to hit, and Neirea's going to get aggressive. This is one instance where he says, you know what, Alex Strauss is better. It puts out an 8/8 on the body. Your offensive potential is so much better for the 9 mana spent. And Palmblad has to deal with it.
It's specifically a lot safer against decks with a lot of burn like Freeze Mage.
Yeah.
If this was Draxus, it would just be in his hand the entire game. He simply would not be able to play it because he just put himself in lethal range against the Freeze Mage deck. But here, he's able to actually get a little bit of damage in as well as generate a non-trivial threat.
Yeah, this has to be frightening for Neirea. You see Emperor go down and he hit 8 cards. Now we know that Palmblad only has Fireball and Frostbolt. That's relatively weak for a burst combo, but Neirea might have to start counting. Is there a way for me to die here? Is he gonna even life tap? Probably not. Just wants to avoid dying at all possibilities.
He's still got an 8/8 in play, and he has Leroy plus Power Overwhelming, which in a lot of worlds is pretty threatening. But he's playing against a deck with a bunch of above secrets like Ice Barrier and Ice Block, so much less likely to give him lethal damage just from his hand. And I see Dan doing math over here in his fingers. He's trying to figure out, okay, exactly what's going on with this burn.
Well, first, he most likely wants to deal with his Alexstrasza, or at least stall for it of some kind, because if he plays Alexstrasza and his opponent plays Reno and pops a block, he's done for. So I think he has to be careful about his opponent's Alexstrasza. And also, he has to set up Ice Block. I actually didn't even count for
Barrier in play.
It's Ice Barrier in play, so he needs a little bit more. He needs to pick up either both of his Ice Lances or that Roaring Torch that he invested very early, or the Forgotten Torch that he invested early on, in order to assemble damage post Alexstrasza, which is something that he can account for if he's able to get there. Looks like Palmblad's just going to try and put the Accolade onto the board. I wonder if he's tempted to even throw out a second Accolade, but I think he might not have enough turns for that.
I think he may even be thinking about Doomsayer here.
That's interesting.
Because it does prevent the development of... It's just going to play one Doomsayer? Interesting, because the second Doomsayer would have basically induced Neirea to go face, but would have guaranteed him a clear board to just play his Alexstrasza on.
Oh!
Speaking of Alexstrasza,
big time pickups. That could have been disastrous. Although, I think Evolve Kobold would have been even more devastating. Yeah. Pulling that out would have just potentially ended the game.
And actually, that may have been part of Palmblad's reasoning to not play Doomsayer, to give him more protection on his key minions against Dirty Rat.
Yeah, very interesting. And maybe Neirea just lets this go then. Just attacks with Alexstrasza. Knows that his opponent only has a few more cards that got hit by Emperor compared to the 8 that started off with. And if he got the ideal discount, he would have Fireball, Frostbolt, Ice Lance, which equates to 17 damage. Oh, he's going to Leroy. Oh, he's going to pop.
He's actually one damage away from popping with the Soulfire.
Okay.
He can put him down to 1 health here.
Oh, interesting.
Choose to just get the 10 in here while the Whelps will die.
Yeah, it makes sense. Your opponent has no healing abilities because he just used Ice Barrier and he used Alexstrasza.
Absolutely. Very heads-up play from Neirea, getting that in when there would not be a drawback. Roaring Torch, we see a little bit of a nod from Palmblad there, recognizing that was a very important draw.
So 21 damage with the Kobold. If you squeeze in, you can't squeeze in Blood Mage, use that. That's 10 mana already by itself. And this is exactly why it's key to have those Ice Lances, because Palmblad might have to part ways with one of these Fireballs preemptively to try to get a Reno out of his opponent. If he senses Neirea has it. I mean, granted, Nerea's only halfway through his deck, and Reno's a one-of. It's not as likely. But if he wants to start playing around those ranges, he has to consider, do I toss a Fireball and start thinking about Ice Lances? Because if you draw an Ice Lance, you have 13 plus the Cold Ball, so that's 19. I mean, you're putting him down to 19. So maybe there's that possibility. He doesn't have Reno, you get Ice Lance. And he clears the board, assuming it does that.
The Hellfire does allow him to get a little bit more damage on Palmblad. That makes any hit or the Soulfire into an ability to break the Ice Block. Palmblad does find the second Ice Block, though, and now we'll need to work through the full 30 life from Neirea.
You know what? Ice Bear is actually
it's pretty good.
In Palmblad's mind, not the worst thing in the world because it hypothetically protects his Ice Block. Well, we know Neirea has direct damage, not only through Soulfire, but also through Fellfire Potion, an interesting tech choice that he put into his deck list. But right now, like we said, he has 19 damage through Evolve Kobold, Roaring Torch, Frostbolt, and Ice Lance. I guess 20 with the hero power. If he gets another Ice Lance, he can extend that range to 26, but still a little bit far off, which means he has to hero power for a few turns to get himself closer.
Yeah, he has 5 cards left in his deck. One of those is Ice Lance. I believe he still has a Forgotten Torch that has not yet turned into a Roaring Torch. So that does take some time. And how much time he has, he's sitting here at 2. It's worth noting that there's not much burst remaining in Neirea's deck. You said the Fellfire Potion, there was the Soulfire in hand. Lots of kind of dead cards in Neirea's hand as well. And
well, the interesting thing about Fellfire Potion is that if Neirea needed to use it to pop the block, he would actually put himself potentially within range.
It's true.
Dying. Oh, Refreshment Vendor. That's a card that we kind of started forgetting about, but every single point of health that can be healed matters in this matchup.
It's kind of an interesting spot because Neirea, yes, he can pop block, but he knows there's an ice barrier up. So popping block doesn't really necessarily accomplish anything unless he also has another way to do direct damage. He has Kazakus in his deck that could potentially find burn. Also could get him armor. And there's also a Mistress of Mixtures remaining in his deck that could potentially continue to extend sort of the range that he has against Palmblad's burn over turns. So there's ice block number 1, and he loses Demon Wrath. No big loss.
Yeah, it looks like Neirea might end up passing, but the problem is he doesn't actually have a way to follow up on this, so he's giving up tempo to his opponent. That said, Palmblad doesn't exactly have many things that give him good tempo. Oh, wow. Okay, so he's discounting his hand. He can squeeze in Refreshment Vendor and Twisting Nether hypothetically in the same turn. Frostbolt, so he's got 13, 16, plus 8, 24, plus the hero power 25. And so he's getting closer. He's getting closer. If he picks up the other Ice Lance, though, can he actually play everything in one turn? I think he's off in mana.
I believe he's actually he has 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, he's actually his hand right now is the most mana he can spend in a turn.
Right.
Casting everything he has here, so he needs to fire Burn off here, and he recognizes it and does just that. Roaring Torch goes to the face.
Now, if Neirea picks up Brand Bronzebeard, I think that's probably the best draw in his deck right now. Kazakus! Kazakus!
That is a very good draw here. Kazakus, I wonder what he's going to get. So a 1-mana potion is the most likely to get armor if he strictly wants armor or if he wants card draw. 1 mana gets him the highest probability, but the lowest quantity. If he goes for 5, you add the Polymorph Potion into the mix, so you no longer have the but there it is right away, Stone Scale Oil, and card draw or a 5/5. I don't think he's likely to match. Maybe he has not played Doomsayer, right? Or did it come from his hand at some point? I'm trying to recall.
He has. He played Doomsayer, I think on turn 8 or something. So the 5/5 Demon might be important. Maybe he needs to draw cards. His hand's looking a little feeble.
That's true. And the thing is, like, how many of his cards really matter at this point? He's used Leroy. He's used his Power of Roaming, his Soulfire. In terms of burst, he can find Fellfire Potion, but that does damage him as well. So yeah, it's definitely going to be armor and summon 2. Oh, but there's the Doomsayer! And we shake the head from Neirea. He went for the risky play. He was trying to get the high-value double resummon. He could have taken the 5/5, but got punished.
Yeah, he said on average, I don't
There's Ice
summon
Lance.
it. Okay, Ice Lance. So now we have 6, 10, 14, plus 8, 22, 23. If you can hero power, which doesn't look like you can.
But there's still 28 and a Refreshment Vendor.
Oh, you can. So it is. So the Refreshment Vendor is actually really big, and the armor comes into play as well. But the problem is, Neirea can't pop the ice block with just his board.
Yeah.
He needed to have like a 5/5 minion on board. Fatigue, actually something we didn't consider about too. Freeze Mage is almost out of cards. It might even go past the ice block here, Brian.
His last card is the Forgotten Torch. There's only that card remaining in his deck. He'll be able to Forgotten Torch and then be guaranteed to draw a Roaring Torch. Will that be enough damage over turns? There's 31 for Neirea here. Faceless Manipulator and Sekarate Bruiser. He's just getting in here, getting as much as he can on the board.
Yeah. And Palmblad, I think he just can't get there. Oh, it's a Forgotten Torch
itself.
itself.
It's going to put a card in.
I thought it was a Roaring Torch.
Yeah, no, it's Forgotten Torch. So he gets Forgotten Torch ping this turn. Next turn, he unloads with everything plus the Roaring Torch he puts into his deck.
Okay, so he's got an extra 9 damage from Forgotten Torch. That should be able to help him get over the distance because he's got hero power over 2 turns.
And he actually has more time than this because of the Nova. So there's even the Ice Block remaining as well. Although, if Neirea gets to attack, he can attack to an increment that will actually allow him to just fatigue out.
Right. He's trying to use the Frostbolt here to maximize his damage. Shadow Bolt is not it. Neirea is just going to pass. And with the Roaring Torch, I think he might be able to just get there.
It is, I believe,
Well, 17, 25,
Yeah.
26 damage. You can't hero power, so 25, good enough. Wow, really close nail biter, and Neirea didn't really have much to do. Couldn't even pop the ice block.
And that was such an intense game from both these players. Lots of complicated decision making on both sides, and ultimately, Freeze Mage takes its first non-mirror match win of the series after being featured in every single game.
I did actually think that Neirea had an out there. If he got the Mistress of Mixtures, he could have Mistress of Mixtures and Twisting Nether his own board to survive, but I think he would have lost the long-term game because his pure opponent would have been hero powering. Really fascinating game. So now we're tied 2-2. Neirea definitely feeling like he had that opportunity to go 3-1. Taking a look back at game number 4, had the ability to go for a 5/5 demon, chose summon 2 friendly minions, saying it's not as likely to get the Doomsayer, or is it? I mean, I don't recall how many minions have died, but you have 2 chances to land it.
How does this play out? So let's say he takes the 5/5 instead. He would have 8 damage available on the board that would at least get through the ice barrier, not into the block the next turn. But it would have definitely changed the dynamic a little bit in that game, and that was a game that was very, very close.
Yeah, maybe forced a Frost Nova a turn earlier. Maybe forced him to pop the ice block. But at the same time, even if his ice block got popped, he still had an ability to burn.
We'd really have to go back and look at all those final turns in the game to see what would have happened if he just taken the 5/5 instead.
Well, let's go into game 5. The best of 7 has now turned to a best of 3. First to 4 wins will move on to the top 8. And of course, Neirea trying to hold serve for Europe. Europe is undefeated so far in the Winter Championships. Let's go into Rogue Mirrors. All right, so, Rogue Mirrors kind of the opposite of Freeze Mage Mirrors. While Freeze Mage might end up hero powering a lot, passing, it's your turn, it's your turn, relatively safe. Rogue can get crazy fast openings, depending on how things look. Sometimes you get a fast Van Cleave, sometimes you get a Questing Adventure that gets out of control. And there's one of those cards, Edwin Van Cleave. Palmblad actually threw away a Questing Adventure because he just wants to have better plays. Maybe doesn't necessarily have that luxury.
Yep, looking to deckhand is get his patches out of his deck to keep him on the board, at least. He's going to lose this deckhand to the hero power, the dagger next turn, but at least won't be falling behind multiple minions over multiple turns.
Well, Neirea's got layers of threats. Not only does he have the ability to put out a big Van Cleave, but Tomb Pillager over the next couple turns. One of the biggest things about all-inning as the Rogue is that you're always scared of not having anything to do the following turn. You just hero power and attack. But Neirea's got some stuff coming up here.
Ooh, counterfeit coin. So he could make a gigantic Edwin if he wants, or just take the safer route, put out a Tomb Pillager.
But you get the coin back through the Tomb Pillager. Unless your opponent saps, which would be devastating. If your opponent, oh man, if he had prep sap, that would have been just crazy for Palmblad. He would have gotten so far ahead in tempo. Actually, no, because then his opponent would have just prepped the Viscerate Van Cleave. So that's true. That's pretty hilarious.
He does have double coin Azure Drake backstab, which looks like what he's going to do. Take out the Tomb Pillager, get himself on the board. But yeah, as you mentioned, there's prep Eviscerate Van Cleave still available.
Oh, you can even use coin and save your preparation.
Yeah, it's true.
So, interesting for both this matchup specifically that neither player has gotten the upper hand. Usually by now, one player is clearly, almost all in, and you get like one person that's really pushing tempo and the other person trying just to remove. And then, one person maybe hoping to top deck the right answer. Palmblad has double Tomb Pillager, but he has to also kind of weigh how much damage he can take from Edwin Van Cleave. He's at 21 already.
Yeah, and picks up a Questing Adventure. If he had one more mana, that would be really, really nice, being able to get that down, and also sap. But yeah, he's really been thrown off his curve here. Both Tomb Pillagers are just in his hand past turn 4. Usually you want to coin one out in turn 3, then play the next in turn 4. Whew. That is an auctioneer for Neirea, so he's got to sort of evaluate how he wants to manage this, because he could, say, go big in on a Van Cleave this turn, or he could save things for the auctioneer. Kind of have a dead turn here, though.
Oh man, It's such a tough position, but Gatstand prep conceal is the dream. Your opponent can't do anything in this matchup, barring a swashbuckler card that you're not expecting.
The big problem is, unless you are concealing, unless you're just prep conceal into Van Cleef, you're just making a 4/4 anyway. So it's not really that exciting. He could potentially prep conceal Van Cleef for a 6/6, but yeah, it looks like he may just be going for the dagger, U, and pass. So finally an opportunity for Palmblad to get a foothold on this board.
Okay, well, Tomb Pillager seems pretty promising here. He's choosing the questing adventure, and one of the interesting things about this decision is that he doesn't actually have too much to back it up. He's got a backstab and a Tomb Pillager, so he can buff it to a 5/5. And he's got Tomb Pillagers, which you want to have coins for the questing adventure, but he's valuing the fact that he's going to go for pressure. I think he's recognizing that he needs to all in and get a little bit fortunate here.
But now there's not even a target for backstab. His opponent has concealed that Auctioneer. Now, Palmblad has used his conceal, so he's not going to be able to do the same, even if he gets a window here.
Yeah, and no backstab target, so this lines up perfectly for another Eviscerate, or I guess a lot of other cards like that Gatstand could trade in the worst case scenario. And Neirea's got a lot. Sap!
Ooh, Sap is fantastic. Actually, this has Sap Eviscerate Edwin here, which is a absolutely monstrous swing, able to draw a couple of cards, get rid of Palmblad's entire board, and develop a 6/6 minion.
Yeah, there is also a value in just going 12 to the face.
True. not a bad option either. Ooh,
hey.
Prep picked up, so you can get that extra damage in. You can prep out a Cold Blood here.
You know what? There's this little GIF on the internet of a small girl that turns her head and says, "Why not both?"
Yeah, exactly. It's going to get all 12 damage, picks up another preparation, and this Van Cleef is going to be enormous. I can't even count that high.
Well, I'm pretty sure it's like a 14-14 or 18-8 or 16-16. It's super big, and
math checks out.
Yeah, it's Neirea actually was just gonna play a 6/6 and maybe attack with Auctioneer, but that escalated really quickly, and now Palmblad needs Vanish. Oh, he didn't even try. He's probably low enough health. He thought he was dead, but he did have this 1 in 27 chance to maybe stay alive.
Yeah, to not die that turn. But yeah, I mean, he is maybe showing that he is a little bit dispirited by that sequence there. He was feeling pretty good after getting the Priest out in the very first game, the deck that he felt like was kind of the linchpin of this match. But now he's behind, despite that Priest getting a win.
Neirea only has to win one more game with the Reno Warlock. And his Reno Warlock actually is pretty well fitted against other rogue decks. He does have Fellfire Potion. That does help him against a Concealed Auctioneer, against 5 health or lower questing adventurers. So, I'm feeling like Neirea has a slight edge, but we'll see. I mean, cards like Alex Straza are always interesting to me because I don't know how good they can be in matchups like Rogue or the Mirror, for example. We'll end up seeing what happens. Looks like Palmblad is sticking on the Rogue, though, and it seems to be that Palmblad has a tendency to jam decks. If he loses, he says, "I'm going to queue it again and try to see if I can get that win."
Yeah, and generally speaking, Rogue can tend to have explosive draws that can really punish kind of the inconsistency of Reno Warlock. If he's able to get down an early questing adventurer, it's possible it gets out of range of any of the damage-based removal from the Warlock early on in the early game when maybe they don't have Blast Crystal Potion. So can definitely run away with the game and also has the tools to finish things off with Auctioneer and Carder of its own.
All right, well, Neirea one game away from going to the top 8 and being able to be yet another Ukrainian in the top 8 of a championship. We'll see if Neirea can keep up the precedent that Dr. Hippie and, of course, prior to him, Kolento has set, as well as many other Eastern Europeans. Palmblad, of course, trying to represent Korea. We mentioned several times of how he's had an accomplished OGN record, always getting very close to the championship and never having the ability to get to that final round to prove himself. And he's really close, just have to win 2 more games. And if you lose, then you fall to the lower bracket and face whatever, you have to go to another day, face whatever happens there.
Yeah, and so far, 100% of our quarterfinalists speak Russian. So Neirea would be continuing that. Yeah, it's 100% of one so far.
That
Just
is
Stanadachi, who's
prerequisite.
through. So yeah, it's kind of just math checks out, I think. But
all right, well, Palmblad has a promising opening hand. He's on the coin. He has Van Cleef and Questing Adventure with preps. So he's got the ability to explode at the gate. Even Sap, that card can be very useful if your opponent plays the 4-mana threat you're accustomed to. Neirea, pretty relieved to see no early game Pirates. You don't want to get chipped down too much by Patches, especially if you don't have Coil.
all right, and the 2/2 Questing Adventure.
Yep. You actually do see this fairly often, and the primary reason is to disrupt your opponent's turn 4 play. You don't really expect Questing Adventure to get too much value. So it's okay. This is also an interesting scenario. Is Patches something that you want to play with Van Cleef? You can coin out the Coldblood, or okay, Coldblood coin Van Cleef, same difference, and put some pressure on your opponent. I kind of like that.
Yeah, this is the splitting his board across 2 meaningful threats, and it's an 8/8 Van Cleef. So Neirea really under a lot of pressure very quickly. Does not have Blast Crystal Potion in his hand to deal with it right away.
Huh.
And there's no Mortal Coil either.
Yeah, and in Neirea's mind, if he lets this through and kind of takes it easy, he could just die. So has to be kind of careful with that. I wonder if he feels tempted to Dirty Rat, because this move is semi-all-in. You know, it's fairly aggressive. Your opponent just played Patches from the hand, for crying out loud, with Coldblood.
He does have Shadow Bolt plus Soulfire, which could at least remove the Van Cleef. He does run the risk of potentially discarding a crucial card like Reno Jackson from his hand. But if he doesn't use those removal spells, like you said, it's very threatening that he may just die next turn.
I think Neirea's calculating odds of if Dirty Rat can actually help him for a little bit, but I don't know. It's super risky if your opponent has an Auctioneer. He's going for it. Oh man, pulls out the Azure Drake, but you know, that Dirty Rat, it can get sapped, and if Palmblad picks up a little bit extra damage, Eviscerate or Coldblood.
Backstab's not it though, and now his hand is pretty much air. He can sap and get in 13. Neirea, though, as we mentioned, has the Reno Jackson that could get him all the way back up. Even Siphon Soul, if he feels like he's not under a ton of pressure. If he doesn't die this turn, okay, well, you don't have Burst in hand.
Yeah, and Neirea, of course, nods saying, yep, kind of expected his opponent to have something. And it makes sense. You know, your opponent played very aggressive. His hand doesn't seem like it's very strong after an Azure Drake got pulled. It makes sense. And now Neirea's going to have to heal back up to full. He's trying to look at his hand after the fact. His opponent still has 13 damage, so it's not exactly... Neirea's not out of the woods just yet.
Thank you. Yeah, he does have quite a bit of effective removal in his hand now, though. He has Blast Crystal Potion, he has Siphon Soul, so he is able to do quite a bit to take threats off this board. Palmblad here looks like debating, okay, do I go face, do I just trade into this Reno? And Neirea with a little bit of a arch of his eyebrow there as that trade happens. He's got to be happy about that, considering he can just siphon off the biggest threat here.
Yeah, well, I think this is very telling of what Palmblad's hand is.
Right.
He saw that Palmblad passed essentially on 5 mana. He just sat the Dirty Rat and then hero powered. He saw that he played the Tomb Pillager from the top, and right now, not a lot's going on.
Ooh, Soulfire loses Blast Crystal. That's the last removal spell in Neirea's hand here. Palmblad finds Coldblood. That would have been great a turn ago. Well, 2 turns ago, but now it is just another spell sitting in his hand doing nothing. He really needs Auctioneer.
Yeah, he's running out of turns. This Mountain Giant hits the board or Emperor hits the board. Palmblad's in trouble. Neirea even has wiggle room to life tap, and that's, after a big all-in push like that, Palmblad's got 2 turns maybe to draw Auctioneer, and this turn is the most important one.
Oh God, counterfeit
Swing and a
coin.
miss.
That is as air gets, finding nothing useful. 1 damage to your face, that's not going to add up fast enough.
Yeah, at this point, your hand's just speaking binary to you, saying, haha, this is a rogue hand. Like, this is something that you should be expecting half the time, but this is always this is the dangers of playing rogue. Just, you can get all these cheap cards. You can play your entire hand and concede.
Oh,
He can actually prep coin prep coin, and then concede. We have yet to see that true combo.
And now Neirea filling his board with absolute monsters. The Sunfury Protector coming down and 2 8/8 taunts on the board. That's yesteryear, but
Wow.
Neirea, he's got the monsters, he's got the giants, he's got the win.
Yep, Neirea is going to the top 8. A little bit of an anticlimactic finish in this series, but, you know, job well done. And he was able to weather the storm, able to strike down the Miracle Rogue and the Freeze Mage twice. And you know, kind of important to note is that these guys had similar strategies. The only difference is Jade Druid and Dragon Priest. And Neirea said that he felt very favored. Even if the Dragon Priest got through, he had some tech choices that really helped him get across.
Yeah, definitely worked out for him. And we see Neirea moves on as a group winner. He will be in the quarterfinals, while Palmblad moves down to the decider match.
All right, so Rachel's waiting with Neirea for a couple of words on his victory.
Thank you so much, guys. Neirea, another impressive match from you. And I want to know, did you expect that hard of a matchup from Palmblad?
Yeah, I expected that if Priest gets a win early, that will be hard for me. And since we both kind of traded the wins with decks that are different, we had a mirror match after 1-1 score. And after that, it was basically 50-50, depends on draws and the plays.
And was that your biggest concern coming into this matchup, or was there anything else you were worried about from Palmblad?
I don't think so. Like, lineup was almost like 2 decks are literally card by card, the Rogue and the Freeze Mage. So, I don't know. I didn't see much of a Palmblad before in a tournament scene, so I can't tell much if like I was scared about some matchups or not.
Well, we have 2 Europeans now who have qualified all the way into the quarterfinals. What do you think that has to say about the region?
I mean, you already said it.
All right, we'll let that speak for you. Thank you so much, Neirea. Guys, back to you on the desk.
Yeah, actually, Neirea is completely right. 2 decks are card for card identical. 2 decks, excuse me, are card for card identical. So, you know, a lot of players actually kind of prefer that sometimes, Brian. They feel like playing the mirrors, they get to showcase their skill and their matchup knowledge.
Yeah, and you know, Neirea definitely showcased his. He piloted those games very, very well. Palmblad, I don't feel like Palmblad did really anything wrong necessarily. That